Referring back to the stage play that you've just written and are now showing, coming up in March, April, May, and June.
Right.
So you have the title. How long did it take you to finish?
Well, that particular play took a while because I was on a bunch of assignments, a bunch of TV movie assignments during the course of, well, two actually during that period. But I wrote it over the course of about 6 months. So every time I had a little downtime from the films I was writing, I went back to the play. Which is kind of a harder way to do it. I mean, usually I try to work on one thing and just go start to finish and then move on to the next thing so I can focus a little bit more. But in this particular case, I started and not quite knowing where it was going. So every time I came back to it, even if a few weeks had passed or whatever, it was like starting over again, but it actually worked in the play's favor because it became this very interesting kind of the way the story kind of spins out and the way the character stories and the dialogue spins out. It's slightly less linear than other things that I've written, which I kind of like. You know, it's all one timeline, but there's a lot of conversation, and it doesn't all necessarily just follow, you know, clink into place, which I think will be really interesting to hear. So that was a little bit different, but generally I like writing things, you know, pretty much from start to finish, however long it would take. But if I had to compress all the time, yeah, I would say over the course of about a month to write it, 3 weeks maybe, you know. And then there's all the rewriting, and now we're in rehearsals, and you know, we're working on the words and tinkering and, you know, seeing what things sound right and what don't, and what words we need a better word for, something that explains things better. You know, it's the process. Yeah.
So someone who's used to writing in the typical screenwriting structured format, you know, how would they switch gears a little bit? And maybe there's some books you can recommend on how to do stage plays.
Well, I basically think you can write a stage play pretty much, you can structure pretty much the way you structure a film. Most films have a classic structure, classic storytelling structure to them. By and large they do. And a plays, the nice thing about plays is that they can be this big sort of jumble of ideas and time frames and things that, you know, don't have to always be all that linear and all that structured. However, ultimately, if you even break down those, there is a structure to it. So I think if you go by classic storytelling structure, you know, where let's say the midpoint of the movie is that point of acceleration where there's that new piece of information or that surprise or something that sends the story in a whole new direction. By the end of your first act of a 2-act play, basically that midpoint is like that oh my God moment, and, you know, the stage goes black and everybody walks out into the lobby like, oh, what's going to happen? That's kind of what you're looking for. You have a low point, you know, at probably the 3/4 point, the kind of all is lost moment. You have a quarter point, let's say, where it might be what's normally called in a script page 30 or the end of Act 1. But in a play, you have that kind of quarter point where the action kind of shifts and they're kind of off on the journey. You know, plays tend to have a lot of preamble to them. A lot of just conversation and getting to know characters, and until you sort of get into the meat of it, you're setting up the world in a little different way than you can in a film. So it can take a little while to get into the real meat of the story, but even then, I think in this play, at that quarter point, what would be the middle of the first act of the play, you end up with that kind of incident that kind of twists it and moves it in that slightly new direction that leads to the end of the first act with the moment of acceleration. So I think that it's not a dissimilar structure, and frankly, I'm so used to writing things in so many films in basically classic structure that it's sort of second nature in terms of how I'm going to write a play. But plays do have more freedom, you know, generally.
Just like with the actress that kind of gave you a hug at the end and was interested in the way you approached it and structure versus, you know, what she had been used to sort of working with. What do you want an audience member to get from one of your plays, aside from showing up, which I'm sure is great? That's a great thing, show up. Get people in the seats. Yeah. But aside from that, when the curtain goes down and they come out and bow, what do you want them to experience?
I'd like them to feel that they spent an hour and a half or 2 hours with people that they knew, with people that they could relate to. You know, I've written a lot of plays that are very character-oriented, very people-oriented, a lot of family and relationship comedies and things. And you just want people to feel like they've experienced something that they can really relate to. And in this particular case, in April, May, and June, so many people have gone through that experience of, you know, like everybody's either a child or has been a child and or a parent. Often you've lost a parent. by the time you get to a theater, you're probably of an age where maybe you've lost a parent or you've lost a grandparent or you know somebody who has. So I think there's a lot of relatable things. And then the sibling part of it, I want people to say, that reminds me of my sisters or my brothers or my cousins, or that's just like cousin so-and-so, or whatever. And I think there'll be a lot of that kind of recognition. So I want people to be moved, by the characters that I've created, and the kind of relating to the whole idea of that, yes, we don't always know our parents, and our parents don't always know us. And maybe they'll go home and spend a little time talking to their parents before it's too late. Ask that question. Tell me about that thing that I don't know. Say to your mother, say to your father, if you were to die tomorrow, what would I discover going through your things that you'd rather tell me about now? So I won't have a lot of questions. So I think there's a lot of food for thought, that hopefully out of this play will come. And generally with plays, I just want people to feel not just that they had a good time and whatever, but they really got something out of it. There's an emotional connection that they got out of it, that they can then take with them, and it can resonate. So.